Welcome back to the Mentor Show, which offers quick lessons packaged within minisodes for busy founders and startup leaders like you. I'm Adel, and I'm being mentored live and unscripted by Ed, who's built, sold, turned around, and scaled startups all the way to the New York Stock Exchange. He's based in the US, a developed economy, and I'm based in Dubai, a hub within an emerging economy. And we compare notes. This is real talk, no scripts, no theory. Let's get into it. You're raising a bridge round. When should I decide to go to external investors and not go back to my family and friends?
It's a valid question that it probably needs a little bit more context to it. So
Yeah.
as you've asked the question, you use the term bridge round. And a bridge round to me is I've raised my seed, probably from friends and family. I'm working very hard to get early sales, early customers, early important hires on board. And I'm probably spending money faster than I'd like. And I know that there's a very good chance I'm going to run out of money before I can close my Series A. I need a bridge round, something to take me from the seed to the A and cover that shortfall in between those two, right? Maybe it's only $500,000 more. At that point, you're going to take money from whoever's interested. And I think what you have to do in any of these conversations, whether it's a seed round with friends and family, Series A from a venture investor, Series B from a venture investor, you have to be very transparent about the risk. And you want to do that so you don't get sued in the future by somebody saying, hey, you misled me in terms of the condition of the business. So I would say I'm raising a round. It's $500,000. Here's what the money is going to be used for. I'm actually behind schedule on my product development. I'm behind schedule on closing revenue because the contract process is taking longer than I expected. Here's what I'm going to do to make that happen faster. I'm going to give a 2% discount if people will close before the quarter end. But you're going to be very transparent about the risk. And by doing that, investors get a chance to decide whether they're going to write a check or not. All right. And so again, the case, the question, the scenario, how do you separate feelings from strategy? I think that if you cannot do that, separate feelings from the business strategy, you will create unnecessary conflict. The way you eliminate unnecessary conflict is be transparent. What's working, what's not working, what does that risk profile look like? And then let people make a decision. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. There is also another scenario where things are going well, but then the product starts falling apart and you start losing customers. Now, ideally, the blueprint of the product should be to build a scalable product. During that whole high churn period, there is lots of emotions, lots of panic that takes place. People get fired. There are scapegoats that get used, lots of politics that get involved in the startup. What should the founder or the CEO do to maintain their objectiveness in such a situation? And the same thing as well with the leadership team. What's expected out of them to make sure that they remain objective, whether they lose their jobs or they don't lose their jobs in such a situation?
So let's focus the hypothetical here on something that you said. Something has changed in the business climate and it's caught people perhaps off guard. And now there's a mix of emotional concern and slowing business concern and possibly the exercise of people looking for scapegoats to blame the change on. I think first off, this hypothetical you set up is actually very appropriate for the whole thread of this session, which is What's the purpose of a board? Purpose of a board is really three things, in my opinion. Thing number one is help the business with strategy. Financing strategy, product strategy, market strategy, go-to-market strategy. Okay? That's what the board's supposed to do, help with strategy. Be big thinkers. Be the set of brains that can potentially see around the corner or see more clearly into the future. Why? Because if they're an institutional investor, this is an area, sector that they're very interested in. So they're looking at lots of other companies, they're looking at the broader market, they're looking at every aspect that makes the sector compelling, like fintech or cybersecurity. If you bring an independent on board, even greater, that individual comes from the industry you're targeting and want to disrupt. So your board is there to help you with strategy and maybe see through the fog that is not always clear in the day-to-day operation. The second job of the board is to help with financing. How do we avoid the company running out of money and then state of crisis to go raise money? Because if you're raising money, you're not operating the business as efficiently. And then the third job of a board is, do they have the confidence in the CEO? And if they don't have the confidence in the CEO, how do you help that CEO be successful? On one extreme, you replace them. On the other extreme, you bring in different talent that could help that CEO be successful. So if the CEO is not very strong on finances, bring in a really strong CFO. If the CEO is not strong on technology, bring in a good VP of engineering, and so on and so forth. Okay? The board's job is to help that CEO be successful. And their last course of action, if all else fails, is replace the CEO. As far as looking for scapegoats, I actually think that that is the kind of behavior that serves no one. And in the professional investment world, I don't know that I see that very frequently because it doesn't do any good, right? If anyone looks for scapegoats, it's not been the investors that I've seen that behavior from. It's from the CEO making excuses as to why the CFO is no good or the CTO is no good. And in fact, I would say that's a red flag for me on the CEO, right? You hired those people, you went out and looked for those people, you were the one that made the decision. And now that it's not going well, you're going to blame them. And maybe they do deserve some blame because that's their area of expertise, that maybe it's not working right. Sales are slow, product is not high quality, earnings have to be restated, that kind of thing. But you own that whole hiring process. And so for you to throw people under the bus, I think that's just a weakness in that individual. What I would say is, if I'm the CEO and I have a problem with my CFO, I would say something to the effect of, I found Joe, I hired Joe, his skill set is ABC, now gotten to a point where this may not be his best fit. As a result, we had to restate earnings. I'm not happy with that. I've talked to Joe about it. He realizes the mistake. Maybe we need to go look for a more sophisticated chief financial officer. Right? Same thing with, there's all sorts of reasons that some people won't scale with the business. But to find a scapegoat is a not very constructive approach. And your professional investors won't do that, because what typically happens, if they're asking for board information, they're going to want an advanced look ahead on what does the sales pipeline look like? What does the product release schedule look like? What's the customer success looking like? What's the churn rate looking like? All of those KPIs will actually start telling you a story about where are the weaknesses within the organization. And you ask questions about how you solve those weaknesses. You don't ask questions about how you go find a scapegoat. right? Focus on the problem at hand. Ultimately, if it proves out that the individual responsible for product development, product delivery, finance, whatever the area of expertise is maybe just not as mature, okay, then make a change. Make it sooner rather than later.
That's it for this minisode. Big thanks to Ed and to all of you for tuning in. If this sparked something, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and make sure you share it within your network. Got a question for Ed? Drop it within the comments. See you next time.
Please note, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organization. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. We encourage listeners to conduct their own research and consult with relevant professionals before making any business or career decisions.